Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2020 Chevy Traverse, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster BrakeMaster supplemental braking system. Before we get too carried away talking about the braking system and how it's going to work, I figured it'd be useful to talk about the 5 main components that we're going to need to flat tow our Traverse in the first place. There's going to be a total of 5 main components that you're going to need. The first one's going to be a base plate. And that base plate is going to provide us with a solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. Tow bar is going to be that second component. And this is going to be the physical link that connects the front of your Chevy to the back of your motorhome. The third main component is going to be safety cables. And these are there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. These are going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring, and what the wiring is going to do is transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Chevy, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main component is going to be a braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your SUV whenever you hit the brakes in your coach, helping bring you to a more complete and predictable stop. When it comes to braking systems, you know, there's a lot of different choices out there and things can kind of get overwhelming. You know, things can kind of get pretty confusing pretty quickly. So we'll just kind of simplify things. There's really 3 main types of braking systems. All right, you're going to have braking systems that are designed to work with motorhomes with air brakes that are a permanent type system. They're going to stay with the motorhome as well as your towed vehicle. There's going to be permanent type systems that work with motorhomes that have kind of your classic hydraulic brakes. And then there's going to be portable type braking systems, ones that you take out of your towed vehicle and set up every time. And generally speaking, a lot of those are going to work with motorhomes that have air as well as hydraulic brakes. But this kit here is kind of unique. It kind of has a mixture of both permanent and portable type systems, if that makes sense. So a lot of the components are going to be permanently attached, but the actual cylinder and the piece that does the braking that goes in the floorboard of your Traverse, you're going to be able to easily remove that. And so, like I said, it kind of has that feel of a portable type system at times. It's also going to work with motorhomes that have air brakes, as well as the motorhomes that have air over hydraulic brakes. Inside of our Traverse, here's the cylinder that's going to actually do the braking. So this is going to get air from your motorhome, and it's going to use that air pressure. Whenever you hit the brakes in the motorhome, that's going to extend out, apply the brake pedal, and help bring you to that safe stop. And I mentioned how this is, in my opinion, you know, kind of partially portable. So this will actually be removed out from the floorboard whenever you're done using it. And that's nice, you know, you're not going to have anything really taking up a bunch of space here, or, you know, worry too much about damaging whenever you're hitting the brakes when you're just driving around town. So actually a pretty stout little setup here. So it's kind of nice that this can be removed. You know, I mentioned about, you know, not having to worry about damaging anything or anything getting in your way whenever you're just cruising around town. And I say that because a lot of the permanent type systems actually have a smaller cylinder, but one similar to this, permanently mounted to the brake pedal. And in some cars, some vehicles, you know, there's not a ton of space there, and everything can be really tight and just, you know, a little inconvenient at times. With a setup like this that you can move out of the way, something you're not going to have to worry about. Something that is really nice about this setup is the fact that it is truly proportional. So more or less what that means is however hard you apply the brakes in your coach, the brake pedal in your towed vehicle is going to match that pressure. So your stopping performance is going to be very smooth and predictable. So to kind of give you an example on how that actually works, let's just say, you know, we're cruising along, maybe see a red light up there in the distance, and you're kind of just barely on the brake, you know, kind of just riding your brake to help bring you to that stop. Towed vehicle's brake is going to do the same thing. On the same note, let's say maybe you're going down the interstate at speed, and maybe there's an accident up ahead or something like that, an emergency stop, and you really need to stand on that brake pedal and slow things down fast, your towed vehicle is going to do the same thing. So, you know, because of that, everything's going to be nice and smooth, and you're going to have a more pleasant flat towing experience. Pretty nice too. We're actually going to be able to keep an eye on things whenever we're flat towing from right here inside of the motorhome. The kit does use an indicator light, and as you can see, whenever the indicator light is illuminated, that means the brake pedal is being depressed in our towed vehicle. So right now it's off, but whenever you apply the brake, you can see it light up. We'll let off it, and it goes off. So, you know, a quick way to just kind of keep an eye on things. You know, when you're going down the road and hitting your brake, you can actually see that it's working properly, and chances are pretty good you're not going to be having any issues. There is going to be a breakaway switch, which is this component here, and this is going to act as a safety device. That way, in the event of an unlikely disconnect, this will get pulled out, and what it's going to do is apply the brake pedal inside of your towed vehicle, and that's just going to help you know, get things back under control and get this to a stop. So when it comes down to it, a pretty nice flat tow setup for the 20 Traverse. You know, not a whole lot of components and not all that much to it, so pretty reliable system. As far as the installation goes, not terrible. Will take you a little bit of time, you know, but as long as you stay focused, really shouldn't give you a whole lot of issues. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and do that together now. To begin our install here on our vehicle, first thing we need to do is mount up some of our major components. Now clearly we have the front end apart, and that's because we're installing these components the same time that we did our base plate and everything else, and it just makes it a lot easier, a lot more room to work and everything else. But with that said, can be done with everything together, the whole front end here, but it will be a little more difficult. With that said, first component we're going to mount up will be our can, and that's going to be located right here in the engine compartment. So here's how I mounted ours, and I just used the provided clamps that come with the kit and some self-tapping screws, and I actually screwed it to our battery box. It's a thick piece of steel and out of the way, so it worked out perfect. Whenever you mount this, you want it to be facing up and down, so this being the top, bottom being down here. You don't want to mount it sideways or anything like that. You want to try to position it just like this. Next thing we can do is mount up the breakaway switch and our Airline fitting. So on the vehicle, you want to make sure to have the male type fitting, which looks like this. And then the way I mounted these up was I simply just used the bracket that was already on our base plate and the provided hardware. I did have to extend the air fitting bracket a little bit. I just used a piece of metal to kind of bring it out flush with our breakaway switch, just kind of for a cleaner look, you know, something you don't have to do, but it'll make it easier to use and get to and everything else. With that said, we can start to route some of our Airline and our wiring. So we're going to have an Airline coming off of the back of our fitting here, and I'll show you how to hook these up here in a moment. And then we're also going to have two wires coming off of our breakaway switch. The two wires I did extend. I just used butt connectors and routed our wires and our Airline tube kind of up towards the engine compartment, because we're going to have to hook it up over there. So I just kind of routed it along through here, and this is where it comes out. The Airline tube goes in the same area as our wires, kind of just a big loop in it. Just goes up through there. And the wires, like I said, pretty much the same area. These just run through here, kind of under our washer fluid reservoir there. where they come up through here in this area. And our Airline gets connected to this fitting here. So this will be the air in fitting. So this is where the motorhome's air is going to come in through. And again, you'll hook it up there, and that'll complete this portion there. So one of the wires coming from our breakaway switch, doesn't matter which one, is going to get connected to either one of the wires on our solenoid there. So in our case, I hooked it to that one. Doesn't really matter though. The other wire coming out of the solenoid is just going to get grounded. So I simply just attached a ring terminal to the end of it, used a self-tapping screw, and secured it to our core support here. And that'll provide us with that ground. The other black wire that is coming from our breakaway switch, that's going to go to the positive battery terminal. So what I've done, I'll just open this up, is you're actually going to hook that to the provided fuse holder. All right, make sure the fuse is not installed. Again, we'll use a butt connector. The other end of the fuse holder, you're going to attach a ring terminal. Then you can remove the nut on the battery using a 10mm socket, slide that ring terminal over it, and tighten it back down. Now back over here, next to our air fitting and our breakaway switch, we can route the wire that comes at the kit. One end is going to have a style like this. The other end of the bundle of wires is going to be a bare end. And this is going to get ran inside of the vehicle and get hooked up to a brake light switch. And what's going to happen is when everything's hooked up, you know, there's going to be a jumper wire that goes from here to the motorhome, and that's going to send that indicator light signal up. But with that said, simply just took that same exact path all the way across, up, and into the engine compartment. In the engine compartment, here's that wire that we ran up here, and like I said, this is going to go inside of our vehicle. But before you push it to the inside of the vehicle, you might as well hook up the other couple of things that also need to get ran to the inside. That way we can do it all at the same time. With that said, one of them is going to be an Airline tube. So this end is going to get connected to this portion of our valve here. And what you want to do is take off the brass. So you have a nut and a compression fitting there. There's going to be one of these in the kit as well. As a matter of fact, all the connections that we hook up are going to be identical. So all the other ones are going to do the same process. You want to make sure that the end of your Airline tube is nice and clean and straight. So you want to use a tool like this, a tubing cutter, utility knife, something like that. You don't want to use a regular pair of snips and kind of pinch it and it have the potential to leak. That said, you're first going to take the nut, slide that over, the crush sleeve here, or crush fitting, work that over as well. And you're going to take this insert, pop that into the line. You're carefully going to line that up. Get it going by hand as much as you can, and come back with a 1/2-inch wrench and tighten it down. Now with these, it's kind of hard to explain, but you'll feel it get tight, and then you'll feel that sleeve that we put, that crush fitting in there, kind of start to crush down almost. And you want to make sure it's tight, but you don't want to really crank down on it by any means. You know, the brass is easy to crack. My thought is, you know, at the end of it, if we have a leak, not really a big deal. Come back here and snug it up. But if you get too carried away and crack it, you know, you kind of open up a can of worms and you're trying to make repairs and everything else. So just make sure it's, you know, kind of tight, and you'll be good to go. Now, since this system is going to require us to use a brake light switch, we might as well route that wire as well. With that said, here's the fuse holder for the brake light switch. Again, make sure your fuse is not installed until we have everything hooked up. I simply just hooked up the fuse holder to a butt connector to the piece of red wire and ran that inside. So now underneath our driver's side dashboard, this is where I ran our wires through. There is some factory grommets, but instead of risking damaging them by drilling through them, I opted just to drill the new hole in the firewall and put in my own new grommet. With that said, the Airline tube, our red wire and our black wire runs through there. First thing we could focus on is getting the Airline tube hooked up. So that's just going to run kind of straight up and over, and it's going to get connected to this fitting right here. So pretty straightforward. What I did with this is this comes as one whole unit already on a bracket and everything. The bracket's a 90-degree bracket. I just flattened it out straight and then removed this T15 Torx bit fastener right here in our dash, slid that bracket up there and use that bolt to secure it, and it's nice and tight. And so that Airline tube is just going to get connected to the back of this fitting just like we did all the other ones. So the black and red wire, that's going to get connected to our stoplight switch here. So just use the butt connectors, put them to the back of the stoplight switch, and once again, it does not matter which wire goes where as long as you have them both hooked up. Now that we have the stoplight switch hooked up, we can install that fuse. And with our braking system hooked up over here on our vehicle side, we'll install that fuse as well. To begin our install on our motorhome, first thing we're going to do is mount up our air fitting, which is located here at the back of the motorhome. The way I mounted this is really simple. There's a couple of holes in the bracket, and I just use them as a template to drill up into the bottom of our motorhome here. And then just use a nut and bolt. It keeps it really secure. From there, we can hook up the Airline that goes to the back of the fitting. Now to hook the Airline up, you're gonna slide on the nut onto the Airline, followed by the sleeve, and then you're gonna put the insert in the Airline, push it all up to the fitting, and tighten this nut down. Once that's connected, we can start to route our Airline up towards the front of the motorhome. So do your best to avoid any hot and moving parts. But I ran ours up along through here, where it just kind of continues along the side of our frame rail. So here's the Airline, just kind of continues to run along. And that same direction just kind of goes up and continues to run towards the front. So here's our Airline, where it drops down and tees into our metered air. So this portion here is our factory metered Airline. And to figure out your metered air, what you need to do is you can disconnect this. So these are quick connect type fittings. You can kind of just push in on the Airline and push this collar down, and the Airline will pull out. And then have someone hit the brakes inside of the motorhome, and only when you have air pressure coming out of the line when the brakes are applied, that's going to be your metered air. And so you're going to tee into that. All right, what I opted to do is use a quick connect DOT fitting like this one here. This fitting is not included, so you can pick those up separately. However, the kit does come with a way to tee into there, and what you would do is simply remove that factory fitting, take the fitting they give you, thread that in there, and tee everything in that way. I chose to use this just to avoid having to unscrew this from our block here, and just to avoid any potential mishaps that may occur by unscrewing this and replacing it. You got a potential for leaks and things like that. So to avoid that situation, that's why I decided to use this quick connect type fitting here. With that said, tees into that metered airline, and our airline that we ran up here gets plugged into it. Now inside the motorhome here on the driver's side, we need to mount up our indicator light. So typically you have a panel, most motorhomes, with some other switches and things like that. Usually that's a good spot to utilize, and that's what I chose to do. This is really simple. You'll have the light itself and a sticker. So drill your hole the size of the indicator light, that way it'll slide through the dash. Put on your sticker, and then simply push the indicator light through there so it's mounted up. On the back side, there's going to be 2 wires that we need to hook up in order for this to work properly. Since we are going to be working underneath the dash, it's a little tight under there, so I figured I'd just kind of explain a little bit the couple of ways we can actually hook that indicator light up. There's going to be 2 wires coming off it, a white one and a red one. The white wire is really straightforward. That's just going to be a ground wire, so get connected to the chassis. The red wire off the indicator light, there's 2 different ways that you can potentially hook that up. The easiest way, if your coach is equipped with an unused brake controller plug, we can utilize that electric brake output wire. We can tap the red wire into that. That wire is already ran from the factory to your 7-way. And once you plug your tow bar wiring in into the back of the motorhome and into the front of your towed vehicle, that will transfer the signal from your towed vehicle up to the indicator light. The other way, if you don't have that electric brake controller plug that you can utilize, the other way, you're just going to have to simply hardwire it. So kit's going to come with a long bundle of wire where you can connect that to the red wire, and then you're going to have to route that long wire all the way to the back of your motorhome where you can zip tie it up next to your hitch, the end of it, and then that'll allow you to tether the motorhome with your towed vehicle. So now that we kind of just went over that, let's get underneath the dash and check it out. In our case, we were able to use that brake controller plug. So underneath the dash, here's the 2 wires that come out of the indicator light, and I did have to extend the wires, so they're only a few inches long, so I just used some butt connectors to extend the wires a little bit. And from there, the white one is going to get grounded to a piece of steel here underneath the dash, and the red one is going to tap into that factory brake controller plug, and that's going to allow us to have our proper signal sent up here. So this is the ground wire. I simply just stripped back the insulation on our wiring, crimped on a ring terminal, and used a self-tapping screw to secure it to this piece of steel. So something I do want to mention, if your motorhome does indeed have a brake controller plug that you can utilize for your indicator light, that way you don't have to run that separate wire all the way back here, you are going to have to hook the black wire that we have going to the brake switch inside of our vehicle by the brake pedal arm. You're going to have to hook that wire to the back of your 6-way, and I hooked this right here. And by doing this and utilizing the factory brake controller plug in our motorhome, we're going to eliminate the need for that tether, that separate wire that plugs in separately and runs to the back of the motorhome. Doing it this way will allow that signal to be transferred through our tow bar wiring. So once your system is completely hooked up and you're ready to flat tow, you're going to have to put the assembly in here on the driver's side. So just to kind of do a quick rundown, this is really simple. This end is going to connect to the seat bracket. All right, this seat bracket doesn't come with the kit. It's a vehicle specific fit, and so you will have to pick this up separately. But one end of it, it's going to line up with that seat bracket. You're going to take your pen, put that through. The other side here, you're going to have your brake pedal clamp. So pretty straightforward. You just open that up. Slide it around the brake pedal. Push that over, put this little retaining pin in there. So that's nice and secure to your brake pedal. Then you're just going to take the air fitting that comes off of the cylinder and plug that right into the one that we installed under the dash. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster BrakeMaster supplemental braking system on our 2020 Chevrolet Traverse.